I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media, and today on the Crypto Coin Show we have Oliver Linch, the CEO of Bittrex Global. Oliver, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Likewise, I'm excited to dive into Bittrex and crypto exchanges and the SEC recent news with Bittrex. I'd love to start off our conversation by first of all hearing a little bit about yourself, your tenure in blockchain, and how that led to becoming the CEO of Bittrex.
Sure. So super quick terminology thing at the top. So we make a distinction between Bittrex or Bittrex US, and that's the entity that serves US customers, or at least did until earlier this year, and Bittrex Global, which is the global company that serves the rest of the world, never has US customers, doesn't offer services into the US. And I work for Bittrex Global. I'm CEO of Bittrex Global. I used to be able to say that the great pleasure of doing that was that I didn't need to worry about the US. I didn't need to worry about the SEC and the chaos and confusion there. But as you alluded to, some people disagreed with me on that. And I'm glad that we can now get back to servicing our non-US customers around the world. But a bit about me. I'm a lawyer by background. I spent over a decade doing traditional financial regulatory law. So I was advising banks and broker-dealers and funds and all the traditional finance on regulatory law and compliance in the UK, Europe, a little bit in the US, and then in particular in the Middle East on sort of fintech kind of thing. So my specialism was actually financial market infrastructure, so traditional exchanges, clearinghouses. So you take to traditional FMI and a bit of fintech and mash them together, and you sort of get crypto. So that's my journey into the crazy world that we call. And I joined Bittrex Global as general counsel, as a lawyer, in 2021, and then became CEO in 2022.
That's amazing. Very interesting story, and I'm sure that puts you in a informed position to deal with any SEC stuff. And I want to dive into that in a bit here, but I want to talk a little bit more about Bittrex Global as an exchange. I know it's an OG exchange. It's been around since before Binance and the 2017 run and years before that. And I'm impressed and thankful that it's still around because it's been tough for other smaller exchanges to have volume and stay in the years where crypto's still growing and it's still early. And besides those few years where things went crazy and everyone was trading, a business has to run every year, and it was tough for some other exchanges. I'd love for you to explain just a little bit about Bittrex as an exchange for those who are newer into crypto and they're not familiar with Bittrex's history.
Well, I think our ethos is what's kept us going. And, we were founded, both Bittrex and Bittrex Global were founded on three core principles, which are security, innovation, and regulation. And those three things guide everything that we do. The founders of the company are security engineers by background, right? Security is in their lifeblood. They created Bittrex back in 2013-14, which is in crypto terms is about 400 years ago. They created it because they wanted to get involved in crypto, had a look at what was out there, and realized it all kind of, sucks from a security perspective, and that they could just do better. So that is a real core principle to the exchange and how it's always operated. Innovation is one of those things that everyone says. I've never heard anyone say, "Oh, well, what we really want is a really uninnovative exchange." But I think what that means and what it means to us is being customer first. Engaging deeply with our customers, and sometimes that means eschewing some of the more glitzy, glamorous, headline-grabbing fluff in favor of actually providing customers with meaningful and valuable products that they actually want, need, and use. And then the third is regulation, right? And if no one ever said they wanted an innovative exchange, they certainly did say they wanted an unregulated exchange. And actually, back when we were first founded, the idea of advocating for regulation was very controversial, and our founders received literal death threats from people saying, "How dare you? This is against everything we stand for. When we take over, you'll be first against the wall." Real kind of harrowing stuff. But it's not true to their principles. And the reason for that is we believe that the future of crypto is regulated, respectable, responsible, and frankly, just another part of the financial services sector, right? And I think we see it as at some point, 5, 10 years from now, whatever it is, crypto will take its rightful place at the table of finance. And you'll get the product guys, you'll get the equities guys, derivatives guys, the crypto guys. It would just be another factor. And I think the only way you get there, the only way you achieve that goal, is to subject yourself to the same principles and standards of regulation, of compliance, of taking those things seriously. That the exchanges I used to advise when I was in private practice had to do.
Well
and it's difficult, and it's hard, and it requires a lot of effort and time, and frankly, cost. But it's important because that's the only way I think you can inspire confidence in an exchange. And people know what we stand for. They know what we believe in. But it's not just us saying it. It's someone coming in and supervising us and saying, "Yeah, the claims they're making, those are true. Those are genuine, and they've been verified."
And I want to hone in on those last two of innovation and regulation. And I know what you mean when some of the cypherpunks and the anonymous, crypto is the only currency, it's the future people, they're against regulation or, becoming what the traditional financial system was. They want something new and better. And part of that is they were fearing, I think, that it might stifle the innovation. If it's regulated, it's going to be hard to put in, DeFi or these new features, or, we want to move fast and break things. I'm curious on your insights into the trade-off between those two things.
Yeah, I don't buy that at all. I don't buy that there's a trade-off. I think actually a proper regulatory framework sets out the guardrails and allows innovation. It actually sets out, if you've got a sand pit, that allows you to enable to play with some sand. The fact that there's grass on the other side doesn't hamper your ability to play with the sand. And I think creating a framework whereby people can operate in a safe, responsible, grown-up way. I don't know if you can be grown up in a sand pit, but maybe I'm mixing my metaphors a bit. But I think that's important. So I don't buy this regulation stifles innovation. I think actually that things are done best and customers are best served when regulation facilitates innovation. And I think it's important to remember the reason that regulation exists is to protect people, is to give them the confidence to get involved. Regulation isn't there so that lawyers like me can feel good about ourselves, although, that's nice too. Regulation is there to protect people and to provide people with the confidence that they need to actually engage in crypto in a meaningful way. So I don't see that dichotomy at all. I think they actually work quite well together.
It's a good perspective, Oliver. And I want to jump into the part about the SEC. I don't know the full story, but I know that you have experience on the law side, and you jumped into this, with the former CEO of Bittrex Global, having done some things and the SEC coming after them. Could you talk about the story in that and where you got involved?
Sure. So it was actually the former CEO of Bittrex US was involved with us. And I'm not a US lawyer, and I was never a litigator. So there was an education for me as well, going through the process. But it's not an education in a way that I think most people would relish. And this was never a fight that we wanted to have. And that's why we settled on a neither admit nor deny basis. And that really, it is what it sounds like. We don't admit what the SEC said. We don't deny what the SEC said. We have just agreed to draw a line under it, move on, and go back to focusing 100% of our attention on servicing our clients who have never been US persons. They've never been in the United States, and that's where we're focused, and we're very pleased to be able to do so. But I think, there are wider lessons to be drawn here about the approach that's being taken in the US and the impact that's having on the global ecosystem. Because if we're right and the future of crypto is just as a part of the wider financial sector, then I think it's quite naive to think that could be achieved, or at least not fully achieved, without the US at all. And it'd be quite tempting to say, there's such chaos, such confusion, pandemonium in the United States. Let's just pull down the shutters, pretend it doesn't exist, and actually be maybe even a net beneficiary as people leave the US and only want to engage with global, rest of the world. Maybe this is actually better for us. I think that's naive, and I think that's short-termist. We are seeing a bit of that, but the US has, the financial infrastructure that's necessary. It has the universities, it has the entrepreneurs. I don't think it works, at least not to its full potential, without the United States. And so the component that's missing there is that regulatory, that legal framework. And I think without it, it is basically impossible to do business in the United States, because law, I go back to week one of law school, when they say, what's the point of law? It's to give people the confidence they need to actually interact with others, to actually go out and engage. And that's true, at a very, very low level. So if I go to an apple cart and I try and buy an apple, right, the law allows me to have that interaction with confidence. I know that I'm going to get an apple, not a pear. I know that apple is not going to be poisoned because it's going to be some kind of food standards law. The vendor knows that they're going to get $1 from me. And if that doesn't happen, then he has recourse. You don't think about it, but the law provides that framework. And it's the same principle for the apple cart as for a multi-billion-dollar M&A jurisdiction, M&A transaction. And I think what's missing at the moment in the United States is a workable legal framework for people to have confidence in digital assets. And that is a real problem, because it means that even those of us that want to do the right thing, and there are a lot more of us than we get credit for, but those of us that want to do the right thing simply can't, because the law is so opaque, the environment is so untransparent, that they simply don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'm curious on your take on, if the SEC is doing a good job with crypto exchanges in the US, because it seems like they've gone after quite a few different exchanges. And, I've read some of the stories with Coinbase and some of these other exchanges. They tried to respond and say, okay, well, if we don't know what the rules are, then tell us. And they didn't really have an answer, just sort of leaving it up in the air. It seems like it's the way that regulation should be happening is not really progressing in the manner, at least that the crypto exchanges wanted.
I think what you're seeing is a two-speed approach in the world, right? You're seeing the most successful regulatory regimes, and I'll come back to what I mean by successful in a minute. The most successful regulatory regimes are the ones that engage with crypto, analyze it, say it's important, it's not going anywhere. What are the risks? And okay, here's how you can do it safely. And they create bespoke, fit-for-purpose rules. Right, that's what we saw in Bermuda, and Liechtenstein led the way, but we've seen it now in the EU with MiCA. We're seeing it in the UK with its regime that's forthcoming. VARA in Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore. Yeah, all these jurisdictions are realizing that they want a piece of the action, but they also want to protect their customers. The other approach, which is the one that seems to be taken in the US and elsewhere, but the US is obviously the most important of them, is to try and view crypto through the prism of traditional finance, through the lens of traditional finance. And what you end up with is unedifying discussion about, is crypto a bit like a security, a bit like a commodity, a bit like the answer is no, it's like none of those things. It's crypto, and you're never going to be able to fit that square peg into the round hole, especially when that round hole was created like nearly 100 years ago. And so when I say most successful, ultimately, it's the US citizens that are going to be failed, and they're being failed twice. They're being failed because they're not going to get access to the products and services that crypto offers, and they'll look at people around the world and say, well, why do they get to enjoy these services? Why do they get access to these things, and we don't? Because all the good people have left and are refusing to engage in the US. I speak to our customers every day, are increasingly desperate to convince themselves they're going to have no US nexus. And actually following the settlement, they know that Bittrex Global is here for them as a non-US exchange, and that's incredibly important to them. But that's really sad if you're a US person, you're being failed. But maybe even more importantly, the way you're being failed, secondly, is that you're not providing those protections to people that regulation affords. Right? If you don't create a path for good actors to behave well and provide services in that respectable, responsible, supervised way, all you're really doing is clearing a path for bad actors to act nefariously. And exactly those people that you most want to protect, exactly those people that we've spent decades creating consumer protections for and process and obligations to defend, they're the people that are the most vulnerable. They're the people that are most at risk. And unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation. Do I blame the SEC for it, for creating this confusion? In many ways, not, right? Because they've not been given the tools that they need in the form of a regulatory framework that is actually fit for purpose. If all you've been given is a hammer, then of course the whole world looks like a nail because that's all you've got. Regulation by enforcement, just as a matter of general principle, doesn't work. And I think that chaos and confusion, someone described it as a fog, and I think that's right. They just don't know what to do. That can only be solved, I think, in a way that it has been solved around the world, namely by the introduction of an actual bespoke, fit-for-purpose regulatory regime. So I think that's why a lot of people are looking to Congress to solve this problem.
Yeah, and I hope it gets solved soon. It seems like these exchanges, like Bittrex Global, for example, or Binance International, Coinbase, also moving out of the U.S., starting a Bermuda exchange or offshore because they want to service more people. It's not to say that those people that are using, for example, Bittrex Global, are not protected. It's the Wild West and they're going to lose their funds if they transfer somewhere. And that's why I think people inside of the States are angry, because they're like, well, people 2 minutes away across the Canadian border, they can trade and I can't. And those people are, I don't know if they're taking part of their own risks or what, but how does that work?
Well, it's not even that they're not as protected. Actually, if you're a customer of Bittrex Global, you have a much higher level of protection because Bittrex Global is so very strongly regulated. But you're benefiting from a regulatory regime, from supervisory oversight, from regulators that really know what they're doing, right? In Liechtenstein and in Bermuda, not only do they have a fit-for-purpose regulatory regime, that's important, but that's just nice words on a page. Actually, probably even more important is supervisory oversight from experienced and educated regulators. Well, look at where we are in Liechtenstein and Bermuda. Both of them have very strong traditional finance experience, right? In Liechtenstein, that's private wealth and banking. In Bermuda, that's obviously insurance. And what that means is there's conjunction, this working in parallel of fit for purpose, appropriate rules, and strong oversight, supervision, and enforcement by respected regulators actually means that if you are contracting with Bittrex Global, then you're in a much stronger position than if you're contracting with an exchange that is not regulated and where there isn't an appropriate regulatory regime.
Okay, great to know. And I'm happy that there was a settlement with Bittrex and the SEC, and obviously you want to look forward to the next steps and be optimistic about getting that out of the way and getting back to actually running the business, serving the customers. Can you talk about the present, moving forward with actually running the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are, in many ways, back to business as usual, right? This was never our fight and not something that we wanted to get involved in. I spend my time actually engaging with regulators and engaging with our own supervisory oversight to service our own customers. So in many ways for us, this is the ability to draw a line under this and move on, means I can go back to what I did before, which is not engage in the United States, not offer services in the United States. And there's a big wide world out there, and it's an exciting prospect. Increasingly, we're seeing pockets of interest around the world where they didn't necessarily exist before, and people really beginning to open up to and wise up to the opportunities that crypto can offer and digital assets can offer.
Very exciting. And is there anything that you and your team have to focus on whether it's feature-wise or geographic-wise, to grow Bittrex Global's position, in the ranks of, hey, people actually want to use Bittrex instead of other exchanges, or there's new areas where Bittrex will enter to gain new customers?
Yeah, I think, you mentioned early on our longevity, and our longevity is a product of our core beliefs. And I think what people know that they're getting from Bittrex Global is, to come back to our three principles: security, innovation, and regulation. I think the reason that people have confidence in us is because we do the basics well. Mm-hmm. And in the world where there are still too many uncertainties and too much buzz around who's providing what and when and to whom, people get a lot of confidence. They know that if they're contracting with a Bittrex Global entity, that is the entity that is regulated, and go look it up on the register. There's no confusion there. And I think our strength is in being straightforward with our customers, in engaging deeply with our customers, and issuing some of the more headline grabby sort of products and services. Actually, what that means is we're innovating all the time, but in the realm of what our customers actually want from us, actually want from the spot exchange. We have an incredibly wide selection of altcoins, and probably the widest selection of altcoins available on any regulated exchange. Mm-hmm. That's meaningful, and that provides value to our customers, but also our trading environments and our global reach and our customer support and our security are, what people expect from a name that's been around for as long as we have, and what they can continue to expect from us for many years to come.
Very nice, Oliver. And if there are new traders that want to check out Bittrex for trading, or just learn more about what's to come and what are the latest updates, what is the best way for people to follow along?
Well, they can follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm at Oliver Linch on both of them, or they can go to www.bittrexglobal.com.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for your time. I'll leave the links to your socials and Bittrex Global in the description box below. All the best with everything Bittrex moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
Thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to chat, and I look forward to speaking soon.